22nd meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. This is Bruno. If you would please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Here.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Here.
You would all please join me to stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for the November 6th, November 20th, December 11th, January, all of 2019, January 8th, 2020, and the organizational meeting of January 8th, 2020.
So moved.
Seconded?
Ms. Bruno, can you please take the roll?
Actually, we have some discussion.
Okay.
The December 11th board minutes, under the superintendent recommendations, can you just reflect that my vote was conditional on the approval of the tennis courts stemming from the discussion that we parallel paths to regulations?
Any other discussion?
I have just a couple little nit things I'll just give to you, Mrs. Bruno. One is, I think on the January 8th, when Phil Rankin announced the next Board Finance Committee, it was supposed to be for January 13th, 2020. There's a typo there saying it's February 3rd. At the organizational meeting, and I can give you my notes here.
that'd be great.
We had designated for the Chagrin Falls Schools Levy Committee, Mrs. O'Toole and Mr. Kanzinger as the board representatives to that committee. And in the Super News calendar, we switched out my name with Phil Rankin, but the way it got transcribed, there was nothing for me to do, so I would be happy to do 2 issues. So I'll give you my notes on both of those. And then finally, I think it's the November 20th, I had quite a long board capital planning update during the board reports, and so I printed that out for you. It might be easier just to use the language that I did, and I put it in the notes as well on the board agenda, so you should be able to access the original. That might be a good thing for us to do if we put in the discussion area. If you have a more than a couple sentence update, it might be helpful for the person trying to grab the minutes, so we can try to do that.
Yeah, I've seen in the past too where for the board updates, they have actually been on the agenda and have been typed in there. If that's something you want, you can send it something and I can.
Right, I just added it there. Okay, yeah, that's not bad. Requires some preparation, but we can do that. That's all for me.
Any other?
And apologies for so many being on. We're catching up, but I think Jill and I are kind of on a, we've got a system going now, so I think we should be a little bit more up to date on this.
All right, great. Any other discussion? All right.
And I apologize, who seconded that?
I did.
Okay. Okay. Ready?
Please.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Okay, at this time we're going to share board committee updates. If you have an update, please give it now. And if there's no update since your last committee meeting, just pass. So the audit committee, Mrs. O'Toole.
Pass.
Awesome.
No report.
All right.
I would like to add to that though, that hopefully the opinion date will be tomorrow. Cross your fingers tomorrow. And we'll be contacting the committee for a meeting soon.
Thanks for the update. Board policy, Mrs. O'Toole.
Policy committee is meeting tomorrow afternoon to discuss changes to, I think, one policy.
Great. Business advisory committee, Catherine.
No report.
Capital planning committee, Mrs. Garvey.
Also no report. We are looking to schedule our first meeting of the year within the first quarter, so we'll have something to report later, but no meeting planned yet.
Great. And the Finance and Budget Committee, Mrs. Garvey.
So we did have a meeting on January 13th to review the 5-year forecast. We are on track with our budget. Both revenues and expenses are in line with what we forecasted. We are right where we said we would be with regard to our levy cycle. Mrs. Brudno shared a graph that illustrated how our tax revenues have been relatively flat since 2017, and they will continue to be flat throughout our 5-year forecast. And this is due to House Bill 920. I know we're all familiar that it specifies that school district tax revenues do not grow with property values, but rather they're a fixed dollar amount at the time of the last levy. In 2017, we passed an 8.9 mil combined levy that paid for the intermediate school construction project and also provided operating funds for 3 years. So it's been 3 years now. We're right where we said we would be, and so the Board Finance and Budget Committee is just beginning to examine different levy options. No decisions have been made, and ultimately a recommendation will come to the board, and the whole board will have detailed discussions about the timing and the amount of the next levy that would be needed to provide for operating and facility work. Does anybody want to add to that? I know several of you were at the meeting. If you have anything to add, feel free. Okay, that's it. Concludes my update.
All right, you summarized it well.
Thank you.
Next, record retentions. That's with me, and there's no update. So next, we will move on to the superintendent's reports. And Mr. Hunt, take the floor.
Good evening, thank you. I want to start this evening. Every January, Ohio School Boards Association designates January as the School Board Appreciation Month. And I want to take just a minute this evening to recognize and thank you for your service to the district. I want to read to you a proclamation by Governor DeWine, John Houston, as Lieutenant Governor, regarding School Board Recognition Month. The service provided by the members of the Ohio City, Village, Local, and Joint Vocational Boards of Educational and Educational Service Centers governing boards is critical to ensuring high-quality public education for Ohio school children. Through partnerships with teachers, school administrators, staff, and parents, school board members provide vital leadership and support for schools. And we thank you for your service and the positive difference you make throughout our state. Certainly, I don't think anyone prior to running for school board realizes the amount of time and commitment it takes for you to understand everything going on in your school district, and we just want to thank you for your continued leadership on behalf of the entire community. There's been a tremendous lot of success over the last couple of years, both academically, facility improvements, with where we're going with planning, and that's a reflection of all of your leadership. So thank you for all that you do on a regular basis for the children and students of Chagrin, and certainly the broader community representing a community voice at the state. So every year we try to be creative. I may have went a little rogue this year. So why don't you go ahead and open your gift for
Christina, was your idea?
You have to be like
I'll
the
take
first one to
full
open it, because everyone does the same thing. Oh, wow, that's so cool. That's really cool, wow. Thank you.
That's great.
Piece of ribbon.
That's cool.
Love it. Thank you
Let's
very
see
much.
ribbon cutting, a piece of ribbon from the ribbon cutting.
That's cool.
Congratulations.
Was that really your idea?
It was. Everybody else is surprised too.
Limited edition.
I know, I love the
Number
3 or 25.
Yeah.
6.
That's very thoughtful. It was certainly,
Thank you.
thank you.
What is number one?
A Hallmark event.
I don't know where it is.
If you're gonna number it, you know I'm gonna ask who's number one.
Well, that Barb probably has that hanging in her house.
That's cute.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bob.
Absolutely. So that really the majority of the meeting tonight will be kind of dedicated and facilitated by our partners from the Impact Group. We're going to look at the development of our learner profile, and then spend some time conducting a SWOT analysis, and just kind of lay the groundwork of where we've been with this. The idea and really the purpose behind developing a learner profile is to really understand the competencies we want to develop and instill in our young people. So that idea of if, as my child moves through the school district, what are the competencies we hope to develop within that? And really this should serve as a lens for kind of the next step in this and strategic planning and the things that we do as we move forward. So in terms of the work, there's been 4 design team meetings, so approximately between 40 and 45 stakeholders gathered. That was made up of administrators, teachers, community members, parents, and really spent time going through and wrestling with what are the critical competencies we want to develop in students. They also gave some input into design and are happy now to hand that over for some feedback and as we can continue the process. So this has been through 1 focus group thus far, and that was the inner council. So we came and we had a focus group around this with inner council. You'll obviously have focus groups tonight, and then tomorrow? Tomorrow we've got about 35 parents organized by the parent PTO that will come in and give some feedback as well. So our hope is in the next couple of weeks, we take all of that feedback in, we develop 1 more profile to take back to the design team and kind of affirm it. That will then lead to kind of the development of our strategic plan moving forward. So at this time, I'm going to introduce both Tom Speaks and Chris Tomorrow from the Impact Group, ask them to kind of facilitate. This is an opportunity for us to maybe step away from the technical things that we're dealing with on a regular basis as a school board and really focus on kind of big picture of where we're going. So hopefully tonight's just a lot of dialogue and conversation about what our future holds.
For the ninth grader.
That's in the back.
It looked awkward, I'm sorry.
You're welcome to come back. We'll still be here.
Straight down the hallway, straight down the
Straight
hallway.
right, and keep going right down.
Good evening, everyone. Very excited to be back. Remember the last time that we spoke, it was I believe in the early part of the fall when we were reviewing the community engagement surveys and some of the data that came to us since then. As Dr. Hunt noted, a fabulous 4 sessions with lots of dialogue, at sometimes difficult dialogue, at sometimes critical dialogue. This is one of my favorite groups to work with. We run these projects all over the state of Ohio, and I give a tremendous amount of credit to this group for the critical dialogue that they decided to engage at a very meaningful level. And so in front of you, and I know you have the digital versions, we also brought 11 by 17s for you to preview. You have the competencies that rose to the top. At certain points of the process, we probably weeded through, we started close to 30, I believe 35, 36 competencies that through group work and collaboration, this is what rose to the top. We looked at the design process of that in many different ways. Infographic, the tree concept sort of rose to the top with some folks. And so we would absolutely enjoy any feedback from the board tonight, both content-wise, the competencies themselves, if there's questions on how that planning team arrived at a particular competency. If you, as board members, feel like those competencies, 2 or 3 of them are too close and mirror each other. And then we'd also like your feedback on the graphic itself as representative of that learner profile. This will be the community-facing graphic. We want to make sure that it's easily understood and that it represents the Chagrin brand and what you believe about education for the students here. Bob did a great job of kind of wrapping up that process. We are moving it into focus groups for some vetting, and we've already received some great feedback. We hope to receive some more tomorrow morning from the parent members. And ultimately, we're going to get into a little bit more of this when we begin the SWOT analysis. Ultimately, we'd like you to think of this as a decision-making framework. As we begin the strategic planning process, and this document becomes actualized, we will utilize this portrait as a frame for decision making. Frame for decision-making in regards to facilities. Yes, you can connect these 8 competencies to facilities decisions. You can connect them to the communication decisions, the way that you speak to stakeholders externally. We certainly can connect them to goals that pertain to academic achievement and where the district wants to be headed in the future, vetted through the student lens. It is very much a student-centered process. It's, as we work with partner districts, becomes the perfect snapshot to keep out in front. We begin thinking about 3, 5, 7 years down the road. So that all being said, I'd love to open the floor for any feedback that you might have before we move into our analysis. Greg, I know you're very intimately involved, so if you'd like to add anything to that description, please feel free.
So did you, at one point we talked about having bigger categories with sort of the subcategories.
Yeah.
So the bigger categories, empowered, engaged, equipped,
Correct.
with the 9 things underneath it, more detail about what those 3 things mean.
Correct.
Sort of the idea.
And it's still an option on the table. Some of our districts choose to have a build out of this version that tends to be more internally focused, and that would be the portrait piece that a teacher would have hanging in the classroom. Many of our districts choose to actually build out a descriptor of what it means to see a collaborator in action. The student is doing X, Y, and Z.
Did you mean to have 9, or those were the 9 you couldn't get rid of? Like, how'd you end up with 9?
These are the 9 that we couldn't get rid of. At the end of the day, these made the most sense as weighed against that initial list. And if you can remember, we've bucketed them 5, 7, 10 different ways.
Right.
And in the end, I think these are the ones that committee felt strong enough that without these things, it's difficult to prepare a student for the 21st century.
And did you ever try to line them up like empowered is these 3 and
We
engaged
did.
is these 3?
We did, and what we found was that many of them are cross-categorical.
All right, so you
And
didn't
we did not want to confuse community members by saying, this is representative of being engaged, whereas, again, based on context, you can look at many of these and call it a skill. You can look at many of them and call it a behavior. You can look at many of them and call it a character trait. And so in the end, we felt it was just better to provide that flat list.
My initial, when I looked at it earlier today too, but initially I feel like it's a good capture of what was talked about.
Great.
Those meetings.
Great.
And we're a huge believer as well, words matter. And these words, this was chosen very much by your community. People, they identify with certain things, and these were the ones that rose to the top as far as getting excited, getting engaged. Pretty important.
So one thing, when I think about how we're participating in this, I can, as I understand the, staff, and we'll be thinking about what they do in the classroom, and how are we meeting these needs that way. From the board perspective, my guess is that we'll be talking about allocation of resources and
Yep.
how are we meeting these things from that perspective. And sometimes when you're so intimately involved with something, you forget to. So I feel like one part that I'd like to see captured more clearly is the role that the community-student relationship is in Chagrin. Is when you talk about to Chagrin grads, or even, we have a strong business advisory committee. We have a lot of community members that are in our classrooms helping our students stay active, engaged in the local community too. I think that a lot of what we do, our students feel like the school and the community are
Connected.
Yes, exactly. And so I understand that we have growing local and global citizens, but I feel like there's an opportunity to adjust service-oriented to be more tailored to that connection.
Thank you.
So think about, you may not have that answer tonight, how
Yeah.
that, from a learner outcome, like, this is what we want to foster and develop, and then what is that word, or what captures that? Because that is something that kind of went round and round.
Sure.
And, some background on this, that engaged word,
Yeah.
like, is that a competency? And then it was actually a student who said, wait a second, we're trying to create citizens here, and we kind of put that sentence together, towards the end, and everybody's like, wow, that really captures it.
Yeah.
So think about what that might be.
Okay.
And again, you don't need it tonight, but
Okay.
that was certainly something that I think people wrestled with.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, I think that there are a lot. I really like the thought of starting with local and globally, because they leave here, many come back. But, and the empowered, engaged, and equipped I thought was fantastic. And I can see how these really capture a lot of what we do.
Thank you.
Likewise, I would say, I mean, I like the phrase, I like a lot of the competencies, I like a lot of the graphics, I like that one the most. On that one, the only thing it says, yeah, it says creative thinker and critical thinker, so you
Right.
take thinker
Where the
off
other ones just
creative.
say creative, yeah.
Right. But, I mean, for me, just looking at it, like I said, I like a lot of the competencies. The only sense that I got from a lot of the words, when I think of kind of the time phasing of where they're at, a lot of them are now. A lot of them are now, so the only thing, I mean, I'm obviously coming to this very late, that I see missing from it is like the future, the visionary. And like, visionary is probably, one of the best words I can think of to kind of capture that.
It's
So
on our
that's kind of the
original
only-
list, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and dive into this conversation, because leadership was one that got really talked about. Some people strongly felt we should be developing leadership in every student, and then the other side of that was not everyone's a leader. That's not the reality. So I don't know if that fits with visionary or not. Is it the same argument that not everyone is that type of person, and can you really seek to develop that in all?
Were you thinking more of, like, for now and for the future? Like, I don't want to add more words to what you have, but
Sure.
growing local and global citizens who are empowered, engaged, and equipped now and into the future, something like that. I think you were speaking more to that we're forward thinking about what students will need to achieve in the future and giving them the tools to grow there. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that what you were thinking by
No,
visionary?
I was just thinking more, I was just thinking through each one of these competencies, like I said, what it means to be a communicator, it means to be creative and everything, and then I thought, well, like I said, I just, to me, it was missing that element of like, okay, these are all good for the now, in the now, and that now time phase, forward and back a little bit. But then as far as like where is the situation of the world going, what am I gonna do now that is gonna change the world in 20 years?
And that's where that discussion, we talk about creative, problem solver, critical thinker, a lot of that discussion you're having is wrapped up in those three things. That's what the meetings are.
And as you can imagine, with a group that size, it's a challenging process to think and prepare for an unknown future and the skills that will prepare students for that future. So there's a lot of great dialogue that takes place during that process that we felt as this leaked out of the finishing line, that we did a good job of talking about the needs that we know and can recognize and identify right now, but also that sort of how to prepare for an unknown future.
Something that's always fascinating too is this ends up with a bunch of very meaningful words on a page, but a lot of the value was the people in that room thoughtfully hashing it out. There's some strong opinions, right? And now we have a big cadre of people that have spent a lot of time together and we're rowing in the same direction. That is pretty exciting.
The other one that I'm still processing is empathetic. I was a psychology minor, so my husband often likes to make fun of me for my couch side psychology evaluation of the whole family. But there are lots of different theories about how we're born, and there are spectrums. There's like 16 characteristics, and a lot of people would say you're 99% who you were the minute you were born. But empathy is one that's on that rating scale. And when I look at all these other things, obviously we want all our students to have empathy, but I'm not sure if that's more of a personality trait than a learner profile.
That same discussion about many of these competencies, and whether they are learned traits, whether they are innate. Again, that's kind of that difficult line of delineation. We also wrestled with, and this is in all of our districts, you consistently wrestle with what is the responsibility of school versus the responsibility of home, and where do those worlds meet and converge.
But I think some of this will come with next steps, which would include okay, staff, if we value empathy, what does it look like?
Right.
What does that look like in practice in a school setting? So we can start to really understand the meaning behind that, because empathy could mean different things.
And I think we do, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, we've heard from students who have started small group interactions at dances because some of our students don't like the loud noise. And so I think we value and support empathy in our students. I just don't know, are we in the classroom setting going to start having it be more of an expectation? And then in the same way that I can see leadership being maybe not what you expect of every student, I'm not sure the goal will be to all get them to a certain bar empathically. I don't know.
But is the goal to get into the place where, although one individual maybe they're naturally there and empathetic, another person has no idea what that looks like, is the idea to have a profile of someone at the end that we will want the individuals that come with us, that they have a sense of what that is. They have a sense, because these are the elements which you all believe are going to propel them in the future.
I mean, there are spectrum disorders where empathy is not achievable. So that's another concern I have about having that as part of our learner profile.
Going in another tangent. I tried to look at this as for someone from the outside, the community that maybe doesn't have kids in the school looking at this, and I don't see the concept of educated on here. You know, I mean, these are all great words, but nowhere does it say that we're in the business of education. I mean, we talk about a learner, but other than that, I mean, I love the growing local and global citizens who are empowered, engaged, and equipped, but we don't say anything.
Add educated, you have the 4 E's.
Well, can we just
Empowered,
educated,
engaged, equipped, and educated.
I think we could add educated in that top, educating local and global citizens, or
Something.
educating future local and global,
Yeah.
right? I agree with you, Mary.
Okay, all right. And then, okay, I'm a big grammar person. And when I look at these 9 things, I'm like, okay, 4 of them are nouns and 5 of them are adjectives, and
We
it
talked
drives
about
me crazy.
understand.
So I'm like, unless we're gonna color code the nouns one color and the adjectives another, I'm like, you know, instead of a collaborator, we can make it collaborative or something. But I should look at it from not a school person and be like, what is this? I don't know. I'm seeing some people are nodding their heads and and I'm sure you've been through this, but I don't know how you do that, but that's.
It's difficult because not all 9 can be placed in.
Absolutely, I
That's
tried
right.
last night and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
We tried, and
But then I thought, well, we could color the nouns one color and the others the other,
Sure.
and then that would, you know, or
Sure.
something. But I like a lot of them, but yeah. And I also was wondering about future leaders, but then it was like, yeah, maybe everybody isn't. I don't know.
Do we want, so that, I'd like to understand better, Bob, is it that we don't think every student, every person should develop leadership skills, or we're trying to be sensitive to there are different types of leaders? Because I think there are quiet leaders and there are more aggressive.
I'm giving you, not my opinion,
Yeah.
I'm giving you what I heard. This went round and round. There's people that thought leadership needed to be there. One of the things that resonated with me was, we'll start to look at the skills of a leader, the things that make people an effective leader, and then you start to look at these words, and you realize a lot of them are there. And that's where I kind of backed off the word leadership. Something else you probably should know, a decision was made around what was classified as maybe, this is going to come off wrong, but buzzwordy, growth mindset, grit. A lot of good work is out there right now on this, and things that are important. But the committee wanted to kind of avoid those things within the profile.
Where does, I'm sure it's in here somewhere, the concept of personal responsibility, what area do you think that kind of fell into as you were?
I think our argument would be self-aware. Again, oftentimes throughout this process, you're working with 4 competencies that ultimately get packaged as one
Sure.
for lack of space. And
Right.
it would have been great to have a visual with all 30, but I think our argument would be that inside of self-awareness
Okay.
comes all of those
That's where you
qualities.
have, yeah.
How about entrepreneurial?
That was one of our original 40 as well,
Yeah.
something along those lines, yeah.
Like self-starter, self-awareness.
I don't know what this becomes and what it looks like as it's taken to a more granular level,
Mhm.
but I agree with, well, I think the growth mindset aspect is important. To me, it's sort of there in the growing, because what I want is every parent and student to look at this and see it as a not yet, you know?
Absolutely, aspirational. Yeah.
The process.
Well, the sentence actually solved some arguments. Growth, engaged,
Yeah,
equipped, that was that knowledge piece.
okay.
So that became the way to get out of the room.
And again, that was driven by a student. I would like, again, Dr. Hunt mentioned that, but it was a powerful kind of all-encompassing wrap-up statement that all the adults in the room took a collective deep breath and said, that was pretty profound. And it found its way on the profile, so kudos to that young lady. It was a fabulous vision. Not an easy task to get here. Again, kudos to that group. A lot of round and round and round, and a couple of points throughout those 4 meetings, you kind of say to yourself, man, where are we going? But
And then, in terms of the pictorials, I like the leaves more because it's less linear. I don't want any assumption of rankings in these, because
Okay.
that's just my thoughts on them.
your thoughts graphic-wise?
I like the tree one the best. And I mean, to me, it was like it shows rootedness, you know, like we're rooted in this.
Is Chagrin Falls on the globe? Are we on the globe? Can we
It's not.
Yeah.
Can we be on the globe? That would be helpful.
Rotate the globe down.
Yeah, I would kind of maybe rotate the globe so that, and maybe even put a dot or,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
put the
let's see,
CF on
Shouldn't the
there.
tree be
that's
coming
cool.
out of Chagrin Falls?
That would be cool.
When the
You
tiger
guys are the graphic folks.
We'll figure it out.
It's interesting, sometimes when you show the globe, people don't want it to be such a Western focused. And that's why sometimes you show, because if you look at a globe, you always see the United States, right? So
Right.
that's the rationale.
But I was like,
Where should-
this looks like
You wanna
a
see home.
global
You wanna
citizen,
see
not
home, sure.
local
Sure.
Yeah.
either, so.
Yeah, sure.
With any of those too, the idea is whatever you choose, that can then be the basis for a lot of other cool graphic things we will do in the future. We can do an awful lot with the natural tree feel. however you want it.
Yeah, the branching, I think, has a lot of potential, and you would clean up the graphics, so the
Yep.
words,
Yeah.
maybe different leaves and that kind of thing.
What's fun about that too is later on, if you're breaking out the characteristics of each of those, things like for the
More
branches,
branches,
a lot of
yeah.
that stuff.
So just something to be different, but this was, the first one was my favorite. Because to me, the other one, I get lost finding, what is this about? I can't figure out what this is about when I look at it. That's my main thing. It's like, I look at it, it's like, wait, what?
When you said the first one, for you,
This one.
More chance.
And is it learned?
So that's my, I get lost in the other ones, trying to find out, what is this about? It takes me about 15 seconds.
We want it to be, we want it to be
Wait, what?
user-friendly as
Or
well.
this is like, oh, okay.
Should it be a student profile?
Why
District
did you settle on
profile?
learner profile as the name?
All districts give it a different name,
Okay.
and I think, I don't want to speak for you, Bob, but I think the central focus of lifelong learning, conceptually, we want it to be front and center.
a lot of them call, start with graduate profile, but this is our end in mind. And actually, when we started this conversation, that's kind of how I introduced this concept. We had some conversations. And I often worry about putting something at the secondary level when that elementary folk go, oh, it's not me. And really, we're trying to develop these competencies K-12.
Right.
So-
I agree, it shouldn't be graduate.
Yeah.
Does it just apply to the students though, or are we trying to incorporate?
Staff.
Right. I think it does just apply to the students though, right?
It does, but one of the conversations we'll have with staff is, how best to teach students these things, partially as modeling. and what does this look like from a professional or education standpoint as well. I think it would be productive to have.
But in terms of this pictorial, well, I guess they are doing the growing.
And to your point about the future, I mean, you don't want them to only have this while they're a student.
Right.
You want to create a learner who's going to learn throughout their life.
And truthfully too, heck, especially Greg, if you like this organizational layout, you can do some fun things with that, with the tree element as well. There's all
I
kinds
think
of-
it's
all kinds of
because
things you could do.
it goes in hierarchical order for me,
Right.
so it's the way I think. So it says learner profile, then it says the next statement, and then below it's all the
Okay.
detail. Whereas before, like I'm looking like, what is this about? And I'm trying to find like the main point of it. So like here, like the main point's there. Like I
Yeah.
didn't even notice that. It's, yeah, because I can't focus that well. And this one, yeah, I can't, I don't know, believe, I have a hard time reading it. So, whereas the first one jumped out at me, it's like, I know exactly what that's about. So.
We had one decision, yeah. That's easy. One's up. Any further comments on the learner profile? Thank you for your feedback. We're going to then switch gears. I'm going to turn over to Tom.
Do we have, are you saying we have a decision about this?
I think the idea is we have,
I think we have a decision from the board perspective.
rid of
that
one.
This is
That
gone.
one's
guy's
gone.
done.
Okay.
sure.
And then we're going to continue to get,
To-
honestly, all three
To
of these are
work
ready to
on.
go for the parent group tomorrow, so we'll
Okay.
probably keep it and let them get some
Got it.
feedback. Trying to remember inter-council's thought,
Intercouncil was the tree as well.
so this is what first focus group thought. And there's 7 other trees if you want to see those.
Yeah, we went through lots of trees.
So we will, just in terms of this, take the next focus group input. I'm sure you guys will make changes, modifications, and I'll get that back out to the board for you to review. Goal would be to hopefully finalize this thing by March, so we can kind of dig in then to the next steps of strategic plan.
Switching focus now, we're going to walk the board through a pretty traditional SWOT analysis, which is a great kickoff for thinking about this document in a strategic sense. Again, if you were to consider these competencies as part of the decision-making framework, traditional strategic planning, listening to community engagement, thinking about the goals, the objectives, and the action steps that will take the board through the next 3 to 5 years, multiple categories, vetted through the lens, student-centered lens of the learner profile. Tom's going to talk about why a SWOT analysis can be helpful, and just kind of formulating that foundation for that discussion.
Cool, thanks. Before we get into this, I want to throw a quick, has anybody ever heard "We Are What We Think All Day Long"? Emerson, you can do an entirely week-long philosophy course on this. We are what we think all day long, right? That's why these type of things just absolutely, we love them because we are what we think. Are you aware of your thoughts? Are you honestly aware of your thoughts? Most people kind of blunder through life not aware of what they're thinking. Thoughts become actions. Actions become behaviors. Behaviors become habits. We as human beings, your students, all of us, we are simply a collection of our habits. Whether you know it or not, for good or ill, right now, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you are a perfect reflection of your habits. Do you know what they are? It's kind of fun. Chris and I will joke, I'll bet a paycheck they'll wash the same armpit in the shower first every morning. I'll bet you put in your toothpaste the same way, you drive to and from work the same way, you get in and out of bed the same way, you pack your peanut butter jelly sandwiches the same way. We do these things the same way. We don't know what our habits are. We're not aware of them, right? Habits, behaviors, actions, thoughts. It's the first domino to fall. Are we aware of what those thoughts are? And as educators, as we have our kids, are we aware of what we are beginning with? It's the whole step process. We really believe in with all our hearts. Can we help them focus on these things which actually manifest into the other? Does that make sense? We get pretty passionate about and excited. So this then leads into a strategic planning process. This is essentially the North Star. In any strategic planning process, there's a couple phases. And what we've usually done in the past, there's a phase one in which with the board and with your senior staff, you are doing the old school SWOT analysis. And it's tried and true. It is, we're really getting a baseline. Where are you right now? What are you doing really well? Where are areas of challenge? We got to surface those. You'll get those out with your senior staff and your group. And the second phase is actually another phase where you're actually going to the community. And again, we've done this a little with here, with a smaller group, but you want to get out to the community. You want to talk to your students. You want to talk to your parents. You want to talk to your senior citizens. You want to talk to business leaders. We need to get their input. What are you doing well again? What are areas you can improve? What do they think? The strategic plan has two big pieces. The first one, actionable steps assigned to a specific person that is time-bound and measurable. Specific steps assigned to a person time-bound and measurable. That's a strategic plan, first thing that's absolutely necessary. The second is it genuinely has to be the communities. It's their plan, man. This is their school, right? So what is their input? What do they want to see? We need to get that community input. We get all that put together. Another phase in the strategic plan is now you have that information, you build out goals, objectives. A goal is something large, say external communication. That's a pretty large goal. And an objective might be something we're going to do. Not that you need it. This is easy to wrap your mind around. A new website. Not that you need it, but that's something we're going to do to drive external communication, right? So then at that phase, you're building out what are the specific things we need to do as a district to achieve those goals. That's taken care of. And then in a final phase, what you do is you get, and the board is a part of that phase as well, to refine the goals and the objectives. The final phase is you get together with your senior leadership and you specifically define on the steps, objectives, who is doing what, when, and how is it measurable over a 3-year period. Get it all mapped out and then you execute. And on a quarterly basis, you're getting back together. If it's done, it's green. If it's in progress, it's yellow. If it's been taken out for some reason, the flag. If you monitor each piece, it's amazing. It all gets done. I think we've all been a part of strategic plans where everybody's excited about it. They're jazzed. And a year later, people say, well, what happened to that thing? I don't know. Let's get it off the shelf and look at it. It has to be actionable. It has to be tracked and moving forward. Make sense?
One of the things we've seen success recently, many districts are moving to the model that you've chosen to move to, which is the creation of the student center document first, right? So that large-scale decisions, again, they're made through this lens. If those decisions can help students become those 9 things, then we are saying yes to them. We're pointing resources at them. We're moving forward.
It's so fun, but you use the example, which I think is so great. Like if this board is considering buying furniture, and they're buying
So there's many ways to look at it. We were in a meeting this morning with Hudson City Schools. If we want to say we believe resiliency is a competency that is meaningful for students, strategic plan-wise, under an academic achievement goal, wouldn't that necessarily mean, and this can be debated, and this is why we engage in this process, students of resilience, does that mean that district testing should be rooted in mastery learning? If we're saying students should be resilient students, that they should try and try again and try again, does that lend itself to one-off testing opportunities and a snapshot of a student's learning, the current course of time being the end-all be-all final decision? So we have partner districts who, again, are using the competencies in a way to shape academic vision that is meaningful. That's just a simple example. It's not necessarily one that you have to adopt. But that's a way that many of our districts would use this as a value tool in the decision tool.
So in any strategic planning process, you start really wide. So at the beginning, you're very, very wide. And at the very end, at the end of the process, you're getting very granular. Who is doing what, when, and how is it measurable. So right now is the very high level. So in a very high level way, let's brainstorm here yourselves. What are strengths? What are things that people say to you, what is going well with Chagrin? You're like, I am so happy to brag about X. We do X really, really well. What are those items?
We grow local citizens.
I'm sensing a theme.
There's something about at the end of the day, our families are very happy.
The product of the children, the students, okay.
And we're gonna have you vote on these in a moment, and prioritize these. Okay, so we're happy with the product.
Proud is the right word.
Proud.
There's a lot of school pride on the part of community and the families and the students.
Excellent. What are some other?
Students are high achieving.
High achieving, the student. What does that mean? Does that mean what they do after? That means their test scores? That means, what does high achieving mean?
High achieving. So you can go by test scores, you can go by most of the families want their kids to go to college, therefore kids who graduate here can get into LSAT, can get into college.
Okay.
So they can take the next step.
Okay, they're equipped to do what they want to do.
We have engaged families and highly talented staff.
With engaged families is huge. We work in a lot of districts where the opposite of what is one of their set of challenges. And that's a wonderful thing.
Engage community too.
Talented staff, so engaged families / community, or is engaged community a separate?
Can be separate.
Separate, okay.
So, whichever works together.
Where's some of the strengths? What are the things you brag about?
Students are prepared for life after
The students
their
prepared.
schools.
Programming, mostly sort of programming for our size is very strong.
Okay, so just like a variety and quality of programming?
Right.
Okay.
This might be a spin-off of the high achieving, but they come to us highly capable too. I mean, start with that.
Okay, so
There's something
they're
about
they're school ready.
a highly educated
Yeah.
community as well. Like,
Which drives one of the reasons why the families are engaged.
I think we have a caring staff.
Caring staff. Do we put that we have a great staff, number 5, some great / caring staff? You cool with that?
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I think tenured as well. We have administrators and staff who stay with us.
Would you like that great staff, caring, and also, is that the extension of the same one? Or is that on longevity of staff, you see that as different?
I think it's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think well-rounded, not only in different subjects, but then all, obviously including physical education and things like that.
We have robust extracurricular offering, especially for such a small district.
Think about it, we're thinking about these today too. I mean, the school district, gosh, you've got facilities, you've got finance, you've got students, you have, transportation, you've got food service. There's a ton of things you do. So when we think about these things,
I think we're focused in the sense that we rarely ever get talk in a meeting like this or in general where it's not focused on what's best for the kids.
okay, focused on the needs of the kids.
Right.
Student focused.
So there's not a lot of agendas other than what's best for the kids. There might be disagreements on what's best for the kids, but almost all of it's coming from what's best for the kids.
What's some other?
We gotta somehow say that, the community supports us financially.
Okay.
We generally, we say that the need for a levy, and generally they're very supportive, because, without that, we get nothing.
Supports levy / financial. Okay. Which then is it deeper? Obviously they support you philosophically and everything else.
Right.
Okay, great. So we've got, Chris, you want to go down one?
Sure, growing local and global citizens, great product with great pride, high achieving, engaged families, caring staff, engaged community, student preparedness, student programming, students arrive capable, educated community, well-tenured staff, well-rounded students, great extracurricular offerings, administration and board that's focused on kids, and great financial support from the community.
So financial support, I would actually say community next to number 15.
Okay.
And then I think there's an additional one, which is volunteer. So we have also time and financial support infinite. It's parent engagement, but it's different because we have parents engaged about advocating for their students. And then we have support organizations and people on the playground doing lunch and recess duty.
So we support organizations as, volunteer support / support organizations, yeah.
It's one thing I talk about is we're focused on more than just the state tests. I think because our kids come in high achieving and stuff, that We do well at state tests, but we're able to focus on more than just the state tests, which I think is important for something to brag about in school districts.
It's going to working with a lot of school districts. Those are not shared by everyone, so kudos to you all.
Well, and I think so that begs leadership. We have really strong leadership in the district, and the ability to set and attain goals, specific goals. The district is, as Bob mentioned, really academically strong right now, and I think that came from hard work of the staff and really talented leadership.
It's an attractive place to live and grow your family. I think our community is a destination for many who are moving to this area.
This is the community itself. It's an attractive, desirable place to live.
That's a good way to say it. It's a desirable place to live.
I don't know if you say pioneers, but we're always trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of programming and stuff. We're
Forward thinking.
We're like ahead.
Visionary.
I would say striving for continuous growth.
Okay.
Something like that. We're one of the first schools to have a one-to-one program, things like that.
Chris and I always joke that there's about a 50% chance that's bleeding through the paper. So if it happens, we'll can. All right. All right. I had my little girl did that one time at home, and it was awesome. Any other?
That's one way to keep them front and center. Right on the
That's
wall.
true.
We have a lot of data, and we have the ability to really measure student growth.
Okay, so let's go through these again. We're going to give you 8 votes. What we're going to have you do is we need you to vote for the 8 that you believe are the top strengths, which we're going to build upon as we move in the future. This is not easy, this is tough. So the idea here is, so what we're going to do here in a moment, we're going to read through these again with the numbers, but what we're going to do is we'll say, number 1 for local global citizens, and those of you that will agree with that one will raise your hand. You got it, so you have a total of 8 votes, and if you move more than 8 times, you're in serious trouble. Okay, we will count the votes. So we're going to go through these in a moment.
Tape, so we can go back and look at it.
As we go through these really quick, let's go through them again. Are there any of these that need to be brought together?
Yeah,
Are
engaged families and community.
Okay, say that again.
I think engaged families and community.
Where's the community?
And then exit number 6.
4 with 6?
Yeah.
Okay, 4 to 6, okay. I just take out 6 altogether.
Yeah.
Okay, once again, I go through these, do any of these need to be brought together? For local global citizens, number 1. Number 2, the kids themselves, the pride of the community. 3, high achieving. 4 is now engaged families, engaged community together. 5, great staff, they're caring. 6, student, 7, student preparedness. 8, programming.
I think, sorry to interrupt, I think 8 and 13 could be just robust offerings,
Okay.
both in the classroom and out.
Are you good with that? The programming, that's, okay. Okay, so number 8 is programming, including extracurriculars. 9 is the students actually arrive here capable. 10 is educated community itself. 11, staff tenure. 12, well-rounded students, correct? So well-rounded. 14, you focus on the kids. 15, financial support from the community. 16, volunteer support organization. 17, balanced focus. 18, leadership. 19, attractive community. 20, continuous growth. 21, data driven.
Can we put the staff tenure with the other one about the great staff and caring? Or-
Sure.
Staff tenure and staff quality, staff care.
Tenure and longevity and high quality community staff.
Okay. So 5 and 11 are now linked.
Highly qualified staff. Highly qualified covers tenure and covers experience and ability.
Okay. The 8 votes, would you like me to read through these again with the numbers, or are you good?
I'm not ready.
No, no, let me give you a second. Please write down what those numbers are on your pad. Group thing kind of kicks in, and we'll hold you to what's around your pad. 8, yes. And Samantha's counting votes, right?
Yep.
Okay, so she's on her side. We all set? Nope.
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
What does number 9 say?
Arrive capable, students
okay.
arrive capable.
Okay, when we, number 12, when we say well-rounded, is that different than, are we talking our education is well-rounded or the student? Because of our, because of what our offerings. You know?
You have programming and offerings
Yes.
separate.
I understood that the students, truthfully, that's a little bit of a product, right? I mean, honestly, they're,
I know,
you're developing a well-rounded.
yeah, want to put that one,
Is that
12
cool?
in with 2?
Okay. Are you all good with that? What was it?
2 and
It's
12.
Find a way to combine them.
It's nice and neat.
Let me see what you can do. Yeah, so let's eliminate number 12.
Okay. Yep.
Keep adding, I'm gonna give you 7 here in a minute. All right. We all set? Yes? Okay, who votes for number 1, grow local, global citizens? 0. Number 2, the product the students provide, pride in those and well-rounded. 3. Number 3, high achieving. 3. Number 4.
You might have missed me, I haven't had a lot.
4? Oh, sorry, okay. Number 4, engaged families, which is also engaged community, engaged families and community. 4. Number 5, great staff, they're caring, highly qualified. 4.
Right. What's wrong number now?
Number 7, student preparedness.
I have that answer.
You did? Okay. Number 8, programming as well as extracurriculars. 3. Number 9, they arrive capable. 0. Number 10, educated community. 0. Number 14, you're focused on kids. 5. Number 15, financial support from the community. 4. Number 16, volunteer support to school organizations. 4. Number 17, balance focused. 1. 18, leadership. 2. And number 19, attractive community. 0. Sam, anybody achieve? 2 over here.
There's 2 more.
2 more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, number 20, continuous growth. 4. Sorry, number 21, got it. 0. Okay. Okay, you got focused on kids, financial support from the community, volunteer support, engaged families, engaged community, great staff, caring staff, anything and continuous growth. Anything about that surprise you is what you believe are the foundational elements you believe are important. Okay, we're going to take that in a general way and move forward. The second one, the challenges. Now, when we talk about There's internal, there's external. A threat might be something like state funding. It is what it is, it's like a tidal wave coming at you. You can't stop the tidal wave, but you can prepare for the impact. That's a threat. A challenge is something you can control right here. It's something internally you get out of your own way to do better, right? What are things right now, you've got a lot of wonderful things going on, my goodness. What are some things you thought, man, if we addressed X, if we did this, if we were able to implement that here, then we could take it to the next level? What are some challenges you're facing?
So, you might disagree with this, but I'm gonna say the reliance on local funding through property taxes is a challenge because we can control how we communicate what we're doing to control costs and the decisions we make about staffing and what our budget, 5-year budget looks like. So I think that's.
We can put that, I think, on a challenge and a threat.
In some of these you can. Sure.
Yeah.
Is the caveat here the communication of?
It's all,
Or is it-
it's, we
okay.
have to be very frugal in how we plan for and spend our money,
Mhm.
and then make sure that the community knows that we're looking to serve their best, to balance the financial need with what's in the best interest of the students.
So I would add a second one.
Frugal
would
and
say
communicate that
I would
together?
Yeah,
say.
okay.
What's another challenge?
What's the proper course offerings? And what should you be offering? What's the right balance of that?
Just to be aware of
Well,
what,
there's high achieving kids, there's kids in the middle.
okay,
Often we get accused of not supporting the kids in the middle,
okay.
whether it's
How would you change teachers and resources?
So is that the root of it though? Is that the kids in the middle, making sure we're supporting everyone?
It's the balance of course load with the staff and students. I think that's a constant challenge.
Okay. But some other challenges, things that if we dedicated resources, time, money, people, whatever, to those challenges, we can fix them and we can do better.
Our students are taking on a lot of anxiety because it's a very competitive environment academically, and to be prepared for the next step.
Student anxiety, I'll tell you, districts around Ohio, that is a huge one. It's the kids are manifesting that anxiety. What else?
Good focus, being able to focus on initiatives that are going to have the greatest impact and make sure we have appropriate funding and oversight. So not doing too much, having the right blend of just going to come out of this, hopefully, that we know
Right.
where we're going to get the biggest impact, where we need to be putting our personnel and financial resources.
Okay.
It's going to really impact the kids the most. I think that gets to Greg's a little bit too, because it's, do we do too much? Do we have too many course offerings? You know, are some of them more expensive than others, but they don't have as much of an impact on a broad range of students?
Finding the right balance of safety versus freedom.
That is a profound issue right now. So think once again, I think challenges, a lot of things, financial, fiscal, transportation, safety, curriculum. There's a wide spectrum of.
How about time? I mean, boy, if we could have, if our school day was, hours longer, think what we could do, but, what's the right length of the school day?
Right.
And then, of course, it takes money, that's all.
Yep.
Supporting our staff and administration too, the expectations from the state level have placed more and more demands on the role itself.
External demands.
Is that- I
Would
guess
that be
that's
a threat?
Yeah, I would think.
But no, we make decisions based on,
Incorporating
Managing
the
the report
impact
card.
of external. What about declining enrollment? Would that be an external or an internal?
Once again, either way, a lot of times that would be an external threat.
is that a
Threat
challenge or an
to
opportunity?
Maybe even the facilities and assets?
Oh, yeah, that. Which is what we spend an inordinate amount of time
Sure.
doing.
Growing our leaders internally, our staff and administration.
want this to be the board, but I think it's important at a time to put the, kind of the traditional perspective of school, like everybody kind of frames school in one way. So when you start trying to play with time or think about using it different, that's an immediate red flag, because that's not the way I went to school, always on the track.
That in itself could be a challenge to get out of the "that's not the way we do things" mentality. I don't think we do a lot of that, but I think there's always a little bit of that in any organization.
Like, I think it's a balance of innovation in education versus traditional methods.
Risk-taking,
It's kind of lack of a growth mindset, right? It's our ability, the ability to see beyond.
right?
I mean, another challenge is finding the right measurements. I feel like, so what are you measuring in kids?
Data overload and what's meaningful.
Every measurement has a time aspect to it that takes away something. So finding that right mix is key.
What are the challenges, things you thought, man, oh man, there's something wonderful happening here if we just do X?
Finances. We don't have an unlimited amount of money to work with.
So what about, is it limited, what about finances? And they're always finite.
Financial constraints. You know, we do not have an unlimited bucket of money, so we have to make really smart decisions about where we make investments.
So a challenge you're talking about is managing technology, what to bring in, when to bring it in, how to bring it in. Is it actually helping? There's lots of challenges around technology and world keeps changing. So like, you write a paper, you make a video,
Within that, I would add, like, social media too. I think it presents challenges to our students, and I think it presents challenges in how our district is seen by people that might not have day-to-day exposure to us.
Absolutely.
I feel like communication needs to be its own thing. 'Cause
I would say managing social media is different than managing technology.
Want those to be separate?
And they should be.
yeah, communication, I would put maybe the social media.
Social media is more, a lot of it has to do with bullying.
Like how people, oh, okay. You're thinking differently than I am.
Oh, you're
I
talking
think you
about,
have rumors.
you're talking about communication.
Both,
and-
Yeah, both.
I'm talking about managing the students with social media. You're talking about managing, school managing its message out with
Right.
social media.
And, right.
All of it. But I agree with you that
Conversation.
technology is also, I think it's very separate from that.
I was thinking more about technology use in education.
Right.
versus how kids
You
are
know,
using
just
it.
like there are parents that would still prefer that we use textbooks and not have people on Chromebooks.
Let's start with the challenges we have. That's number one, reliance on local funding. Communicate the frugality. Number two, balance of courses. The middle students, are they getting lost? Number three, student anxiety. Four, focus on high impact program, not doing too much. Number five, safety versus freedom. Six, time traditional mindset. Or are we using time properly? Are we thinking about it properly? Seven, support for staff admins. Eight, management of facilities assets. Nine, growing internal leaders. 10, innovation versus tradition. 11, data overload. 12, finance constraints. 13, managing technology. 14, social media. 15, managing messaging. And thank Chris for doing this, because if I was writing, he wouldn't be able to read a darn thing, so that is awesome.
You need, like, when we talked about social media, there really were two distinct topics. One was managing almost like social media bullying in a way, or student access to social media. The other way was managing our use of, the school's use of social media. Like the school's message.
Managing the message.
But I think it can be all, because I was
Okay.
just saying, social media presents a challenge that is felt on many
That's
levels.
what you got it. We got it.
And I want you to hold on to that one as well, social media, this one will go up there as well. Good, absolutely. Any other challenges we need to address? Okay, 15, you get to pick 7 on this one. So what we're going to do is, if we were to dedicate resources to which 7 are going to move the needle the most, which if we were to dedicate some time and effort to the 7, which are the ones which make the biggest impact? Give you a second to take a
I
look.
just want to make sure with 3 that with student anxiety, I didn't mean necessarily the medical side.
Sure.
What are we providing in terms of counseling, and I meant the decisions that we're making about the breadth of course offerings, or the amount of homework that we're giving, or like really things that we directly, the ways we directly impact student anxiety.
That's good. Any questions about those 15, what they are?
How many do we have?
So,
And the frame is, where would you direct resources?
Yes, if we were to, once again, we want to go, this is the learner we're creating. If we're going to do this, we're going to dedicate resources. Which are the resources that we can, which are the items that we dedicate resources to? Give them best.
Well, and one is really not relevant. So that's how we're framing
One would be, I would almost see one as coming down into,
the limited bucket.
well, more the managing message, because you're,
No, it's not
Well,
just
you-
managing message, it's making, like, should we or should we not add an administrator? There's a lot of reasons why it would benefit staff and benefit students, but we're heavily reliant on,
But you could also use the frame of, if there are districts now that are hiring an lobbyist to advocate
So
for
we could-
things like this.
okay.
So you could definitely. I'm not suggesting.
I'm not opposed, and I'm not opposed to the suggestion.
How many do you get?
so,
7? Max? You don't have to have 7? Yes.
you not have to,
Okay.
but you're not allowed to sell yours to others. There's rules.
Use 2 of those secondary, say.
You all set?
Sure.
Okay. So, okay, the number of votes for number 1, or
well, I'm gonna change my mind.
1. Number 2, balance of courses, middle students. 1.
Sorry, I'm on that one. Balance of courses is 2.
Okay, 2. Number 3, student anxiety, what you do to cause potentially student anxiety, homework and others. 1. Number 4, focus on high impact programs. 4. Number 5, safety versus freedom. 1. Number 6, time, the traditional mindset of time. 1. Number 7, support for staff admins. 3. Number 8, management of facilities assets. Small task. 5. Number 9, growing internal leaders. 1. 10, innovation versus tradition. 3. Number 11, data overload, proper measurement. 2. Number 12, financial constraints. 4. Number 13, managing technology. 2. Number 14, social media bullying. 0. Number 15, managing message.
Does developing leaders, internal leaders go under supporting staff though? It seems like, aren't those, isn't that one way that you provide?
Do we want to bring those together and make that a...
You just put it up there.
I think that is pretty similar. We could probably put those together.
Okay.
Was I the only one who did the growing internal?
And then make that a 4, then bring those
Okay.
together? Okay. So we've got your 5 is management of facilities assets, your 4s are focus on high impact programs, support for staff, managing message. Okay. Okay. We never want to end with threats, for Pete's sake. Let's do threats and then we'll do opportunities, okay? So let's talk about threats. Once again, this is something you can't really control it happening. Like a tidal wave coming at you, it's coming, we can prepare for the impact. What are some things that are out there that might be out there that we can take active, we can make something happen and prepare for that threat? What are some things?
Let's try to keeping our money in private schools. Big one, that's a popular one right now.
So it's the competition of private schools?
Well, there's,
Ed
based
choice.
on, is that what it's called, ed choice? We don't do well, then anyone who's in our district who goes to a school that doesn't do well can get money to go to a private school.
And it's being talked about all over right now.
Right.
Some other threats.
And that kind of goes along with decreased state funding, more reliance on community taxes,
A recession.
right? I think those could all go together, it's the financial
Yeah,
dependency.
Money, we just see that we need money to run the schools.
What if the, the pension, the state pension systems implode? Then they're gonna tell all the school districts, you gotta fund it,
Yeah.
and no one will have any money at all.
We went through a recession. You want to talk about?
I think, yeah, well, I think 1 and 2 are the same thing.
It's all the same.
It's money being diverted from us elsewhere or being taken away. I do think maybe the pension is a separate,
Say
I mean, that's just
separate
something
thing.
that's out there.
Right,
That I
it's a
don't think
risk.
is ever gonna happen, but, I mean, the
Right.
state says if the teacher's pension system implodes,
Right.
then it's on the
as
back.
a liability.
Yeah, we have to report it as a liability.
It's
but
the case,
it's
right,
not our
because
liability.
it's the single reason that our bond rating isn't the absolute highest, was the exposure that we faced due to the student settlement funds.
Personal elements, tell us about the financial, what are some other just things as a district that maybe?
Declining enrollment, is that where this goes? I'm not sure.
Community
Well,
safety, I mean,
if you-
definitely
I'd say
Go.
safety, yeah.
safety.
Safety.
External threats is outside of our.
There's a sort of a
Mental health, I mean, we're saying like we're in a mental health crisis
So
in our,
social and emotional mental health of students, or just all around? Okay.
So a big part of the population, like I said, teachers, there's a general sense that educators aren't doing enough, or the teachers aren't doing enough, or there's a general hostility towards, in some circles, to teachers and stuff. So it could infect.
It's a teacher, okay.
Is it being too political to say financial?
This is your plan.
Well, somebody said safety, right?
I don't know that it's
External
Safety
safety
and
threats, I
mental
think that
health.
kind of goes with that.
You want to?
Slash gun control.
No, it's fine. But I mean,
I would say
Just- is our-
unfunded mandates.
That's part of the state, and it's like particularly in, what is it?
This is your plan.
More to do with less money, sort of what the states like to say.
Throw it out there, take it or leave it, but we believe your most valuable asset is your reputation. It is absolutely your reputation. That can be soiled in a moment with the social media and that. So as we always talk about threats, it's something that has to be protected. And if you agree with that or not, just the threat to a reputation through social media exposure for those.
Can you talk a little bit more about how that's an external?
It's external because if something, a safety situation happens, something you don't have much control over,
Because I feel like we should have control over our reputation. It's more of an internal, if we're not communicating effectively, or if our reputation went down the toilet, it would be probably because of, hopefully, I guess it could be because of something that wasn't real.
It's things that we
but-
directly,
We
like our
found-
rankings are a big part of our reputation within and
Sure.
outside of it, yeah.
We found too, though, the age of social media and the speed at which those systems operate, despite your best efforts to frame the narrative and write the narrative with facts, we oftentimes get called to show up to districts where a narrative has gone so sideways via social media, despite the district's best efforts and preparedness.
Right.
Something grabs a
So
hold
like
of
a
it and doesn't
communication
let go.
crisis, or what are those called?
When you see the Penn State Nittany Lion, what do you think of? Very bad things. That's, I mean,
Lately.
there's an example of something that just,
Right.
all of a sudden, something happens and social
Well,
media.
see, I think that was internal.
Okay.
That would be a great argument for lack of oversight and, sweeping
Sure.
things under the rug.
Sure.
But I do think you're getting at something with regard to, there's a better word for it than a communication crisis, like where,
These are the scenarios, think of a truly terrible choice by a teacher. that is not reflective or representative of 99.9% of anyone
Like the
affiliated
cartoon.
with your organization. Outside media gets a hold of it and does what it will. We worked with the school district this year in Summit County, who by policy served the cheese sandwich when a student's lunch account went into the red. And in 48 hours, it went from Akron Beacon Journal, Cleveland Plain Dealer to Washington Post.
Today show.
To 72 hours, son and grandma on the Today Show and doing national circuits.
Was it bad? They gave the child a
Did he have a dairy allergy?
So
You let them buy a regular lunch.
the argument was lunch shaming.
Oh, I see.
They can only eat a cheese sandwich.
Someone took it away.
The argument was lunch shaming.
Yeah.
And the district wrote the narrative, responded immediately, and said everything that they should have said. And none of that mattered. And when it hit national media, no one listened to district messages. They didn't care. They wanted sensationalism, and they wanted mom and grandma TV. And so that, I believe, is the scenario Tom's talking about, where despite your best efforts and levels of preparedness, something was so large and the tidal wave was so strong that now, unfortunately, many folks in Summit County hear that school district's name and they say, oh, cheese sandwich. And it's completely unfair. It's not a great word that's
So
happening.
how would you shorten that? Is it inability to control a message or you're powerless sometimes to control the narrative?
The broad term reputation is the idea that is being aware that your biggest asset in your mind is your reputation and protecting it and working hard to make that.
What's the difference between the reputation and
I
the
think it's
brand?
our kids, but
It's
you
the
can
same.
say it's our reputation.
Sure.
What's the
they're
difference
the
between
same
the
thing.
reputation and the
They're
brand?
the same thing. So it's
Yeah.
it's protecting the brand.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get off the tangent.
I was given this information in general, I mean, coming from, just from my standpoint in the finances, you know, somebody can pick out one little item that they don't truly understand and call it fact,
Right.
and if they don't come to me or somebody in this table for explanation, then it gets out there, and if it's, you know, I'm not on social media, so, well, I mean, I am, but personally, I'm not on social media looking at
Sure.
everything that everybody in our community is posting, so I may not see it, I may not be able to correct it and correct the information, and then the misinformation becomes
Sure.
the perception of circles.
Let's go back to Ada something. The reputation brand, like to me sometimes protecting your reputation is what causes you to lose your reputation. So that's like, the threat is not understanding your brand.
You mean like being over, can you tell me more, like being over concerned about what people will think instead of doing the right thing?
We were talking about like sometimes school districts get in trouble because of the kids' hair and stuff like that. So they can be insensitive, could be racial, it could be stuff like that. You're thinking about your brand, my kid looks like this. You're not really taking into account like your community doesn't look like that. So sometimes like what you think your reputation is, what you think your brand is
Might not be reflective of the whole.
actually your threat because it's not you don't fully understand, like not understanding, but your populace does not understand it in your school.
Greg, that's the sole reason when we engage districts in a large initiative like this, we include a community engagement phase. It's the complete rationale. Some districts choose to do strategic planning in and among a 20-person planning team, and that team acts as the voice of the community. And we've been engaged to come read you plans. We're a 20-person team, created a plan, called it the community's plan, when the community just doesn't see what everybody else sees.
So the overall threats we've got thus far is we have private school at choice, number 2, decreased state funding, 3, pension system, 4, declining enrollment, 5, safety, mental health, 6, anti-teacher sentiment, 7, unfunded mandates, 8, reputation brand, 9, lack of information.
What is anti-teacher sentiment? Is that lack of
There's a
people going into the field?
Well, nationally, I think there's a
Okay.
theory, maybe has to do with teachers really being in unions. They think teachers are overpaid. They think, they blame the teacher for everything wrong in society in a way. So they're using school to fix
So
everything in society.
unrealistic
and something's wrong with
expectations too, so that could be a different type of a threat, unrealistic expectations on the part of our community and parents or society.
Almost like a devaluing of the role of the educator. Is that-
Yeah, or expecting like,
The
not
school's
understanding.
supposed to, the school's supposed
It
to
is,
do
yeah.
everything.
It
Sometimes
School's
I feel
supposed
like
to
It
raise
is
the child.
school as social worker, school as hospital, school as educator, school as
Right, parents.
as.
Something's wrong with a kid, therefore it's the school's fault. It's
Is
like-
there also then something
there's a
about
lot of things that are-
the supply of teachers and administrators, that's something we're beholden to, having good people to hire?
But there is a, it's not so much with us, but in general in the country, there's a lot of states are struggling to find teachers.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say, right.
Because of whatever.
There's fewer people going into the
Because of
field,
time.
so that would, we're certainly, that would be an external threat if we weren't able to find the right capabilities that we're looking for.
Teacher isn't valued as a profession anymore, then it's going to be hard to find people to do it, especially when it's paid as well as other professions.
It's a small number, but a threat is, non-supporters, people who don't support what we do as a district.
Those folks can be loud.
Well, and I was thinking about the information one, because a lot of times you can have a conversation with someone and provide the accurate information, and they walk away saying the first sentence that they said to you 15 minutes earlier, like they don't actually want the accurate information, they've already made up their mind.
Well, and they're convoluted too, because there's, the state funding formula pushes you back, us more than most districts, back to the community for more. There are realities when people financially where that's a tipping point for them. And that's a tough conversation to be had.
Do we want to just put the whole state funding system?
But the only thing I was going to clarify, and I
That's
think
up
it's
there.
under number 2, is the guarantee. Every time they talk about removing the guarantee.
Yeah, that's
a
what I'm
huge
saying,
threat,
right.
'cause that's-
And that's all in the loss of our state funds. What about a disaster, like a building burns down
Sure.
or hurricane hits and, I don't know. Tornado.
If a charter school.
We're not that close to the lake.
If a charter school opened in Chagrin Falls, that could be
Or an
a
earthquake.
financial disaster in many ways. I don't know where that falls.
So
Maybe
number-
private schools at choice, charter.
Yeah, it could be like students or families
Student
choosing
choice.
not to send their
Right.
students here.
Such charter. Yep. All right, we've got 13 up here, which means you can do 6 on this one. Let's once again, what are the biggest threats that we're going to prepare for, going to help us get delivered this learner? Number 1, once again, number 1, private schools, ed choice charter. Number 2, decrease state funding.
Are we saying for private school, are we saying ed choice, or are we saying just people choosing not to send their kids here, or that both?
I think we're lumping them all together. We're lumping any choice of education that's
That's all
not,
one? Okay.
that's not.
Yeah, I think that choice almost goes into the funding
It
problem.
goes with number 2,
Yeah.
right? Because
That's
it's the way
here.
that our funding gets diverted.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, that actually, in charter and community schools, actually take money from us. Whereas somebody just choosing to go to a private school, we don't ever receive the funding.
Unless
But
that
the
choice.
community, yeah, unless it's ed choice, but the community schools, we get the $900 or whatever our amount is from the state, and then we turn around and give away $6,000. So they're actually taking money from
Privates get
us.
1,400 in auxiliary, right? But that's below the line. so it comes out-
Auxiliaries is separate.
Yeah, so it comes out of our state fund.
Yeah, auxiliary is not a community. I'm talking like the ECOTs of the world and any of those kinds of things.
I was thinking private school more is if we don't provide enough value,
Mhm.
a lot of the parents in the
Like
community
enrollment.
can afford to send their kids to private, and they might choose to do
So that would be just more enrollment, because that doesn't necessarily threaten,
It just,
it's a different,
your general definition of anything that takes kids out of the district. So I would still think private, even though they don't take funding, would be a threat because if we don't provide enough value, then our enrollment's going to go
Yeah.
down because our parents do have, a lot of them have the means to send kids to.
So number 1, redefined. Number 1 is private schools charter. Number 2, decrease state funding, money guarantee, ed choice. Number 3, pension system. 4, declining enrollment. 5, safety, mental health. 6, anti-teacher sentiment. 7, unfunded mandates. 8, reputation/brand. 9, lack of information. 10, unrealistic expectations. 11, quality candidates for teaching staff and your administrators. 12, non-supporters. 13, hurricane.
Is that right?
Number
Could
9.
1 and 4 go together, or is that too?
Declining enrollment in private schools?
It might, they're related, but enrollment might be declining for other reasons too. People.
I thought 4 was a notion to just more declining population.
Well, I mean, if you think just declining enrollment, the threat becomes the cultural issues, because you're going to be ripping staff, you're going to shrink staff. There's a point where that will impact how much programming you can offer, you start
Extracurriculars.
offering. That's how I would view that threat.
Right,
Whereas-
and same thing with if a lot of students decide to go to private schools,
Yeah,
we would then be struggling to educate fewer students with fewer staff, and that's why I said maybe they're related.
It's your goal, it's your plan.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's kind of, maybe it's right, like students choosing, well, so let's see, because some of it is they're choosing to go elsewhere, and the other is just people are having fewer kids or families with fewer
I view
children are
declining enrollment
moving.
essentially as birth counts in our community.
Correct. That's
Whereas
right.
you're talking about something's happening in the district. and it's-
Take kids out of our district, yeah.
but is it the threat that we're trying to encapsulate or the impact to us? Because they both of those things result in the same, we have to take the same action steps in order to adjust what we do. That's why I think maybe they should be combined.
I was thinking of private schools more as a competition versus declining enrollment's more of,
That, but I mean, that can also be an opportunity. You know, I mean, it's like, we're as good as them. We, you know, we're better than them.
yeah,
You know,
declining enrollment, people are moving out of Ohio or, not moving here.
Can we keep them separate for the case for this drill?
I'm sure I can think of it.
Number 9 was the lack of information. Is it also, can also be, and misinformation.
Yeah, I think that's what we
Or
were getting at, it's not a lack of information, the
Yeah.
information is there, people are just aren't, if they're not asking for it, then they're putting misinformation out there.
You get 6 votes. Where would we put our effort to prepare for these threats?
So decrease state funding doesn't, to me, encapsulate the scope of the financial threat, because it's not just decrease the state funding, we're actually heavily reliant on local taxes. Is that, where would I vote for that?
Because of the formula?
Yeah,
Well,
but it's not the
I mean, but
guarantee, no, it's a different, it's the bigger bucket. Yeah.
But decrease in state funding is going to cause more of a reliance. It's
But-
going to increase that even more.
But no, but when our state funding is only.
So why don't we
so
just
where-
call it threats to our funding, which include
Yeah,
failed levies, decreased state funding. I would put then unfunded mandates in there,
right,
and the guarantee and all of those things.
that's good.
So you have 7 up there as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that gonna give us the-
I just, before we vote, I wanted to clarify, now that I think about reputation and brand, to me that also is, it goes a little bit beyond the way you were describing it originally for me in making us an attractive school district by our reputation. So that might be what people know about us who are moving into the area, how we compare to other school districts in the area with regard to how our students achieve and our students work hard.
And often the threats, the opposite side of the coin is an opportunity.
Right.
So there's a huge opportunity there as well, right?
Right.
That's where you're driving.
You know, it's 6.
But you still have 6 votes.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Wait, where did disaster go?
It's number 13.
And
Reputation brand is number 8.
I mean, this is kind of like the pension system. I mean, it's so remote that it's not really, you know, I mean, if it happens, it's gonna happen to everybody, so it's like, yes, it's a huge threat, but
Sure.
it's minor. It's
We
all
need to
like
know that it's all
that.
there.
The other school district, they really honestly actually had a clown sighting, which caused a big issue, so that didn't show up. That's the gospel truth.
But I think we're ready.
Okay, let's do it. How many votes for number 1, private schools charter?
Did we end up putting declining enrollment with that? We kept it separate.
Kept it separate.
All right, I need a, how many do I get?
6.
I want to put those together. All right, I'll vote for private schools.
Okay, so number 1 again, I'm sorry, I think there's 2. Number 2, this decreased state funding, money guarantee, ed choice, threat to funding, unfunded mandates, 5. Number 3, pension system, 0. Number 4, declining enrollment, 2. Number 5, safety, mental health, 4. Number 6, anti-teacher sentiment, 1. Number 8, reputation, brand, remaining attractive, 4.
8, you said? Sorry,
8, I'm sorry.
Is that 5?
Is that, I'm sorry, say that again.
8, I thought you were on the 7s.
I'm sorry. Yeah, all, yeah,
Took me a
7
second to process,
took
you
out.
said 8.
5 for 8. 9, lack of information or misinformation, 5. Number 10, unrealistic expectations, 2, 3. Number 11, quality candidates, 0. Number 12, non-supporters, 1. Number 13, disasters, 1, including clowns. Okay, so we've got a reputation brand is number 5. So we had decreased state funding, reputation brand, lack of information, and 4, safety mental health.
Yeah, if you put 4 and 1 together, you have 4 votes on that one.
I noted you're passionate about that. We'll make those together. Okay,
No, I'm putting that on an opportunity.
let's wrap this up next to the opportunity. What, kind of the same things, flipped. What is out there that if we partner, if we embrace, if we adopt, it's out there, we don't necessarily control over it. But man, if we work with that, whatever that is, this is the end result of the learners we're creating. What are some things out there we can harness as we move forward?
To change state funding, to change the way schools are funded in Ohio.
Excellent. What else?
For the more commercial revenue generated within the district.
Economic growth.
Economic growth, yep.
I would put private schools as an opportunity to work with them, see what they're doing, you know. I think there could be synergies there.
I think one of the opportunities is to not always be the first person out doing new things and to learn from others, but I don't know how to say that.
I think that's an internal.
I guess besides, I go back to number 3, not just private schools, but also our other districts that we
Private school.
can collaborate with.
Yeah, I was going to add that to
Yeah.
yours too. We have opportunities for
I mean,
synergies and cost sharing arrangements and things like
We
that.
live in an area of
Outsourcing
private schools.
things that are needed, but we don't need to develop internally.
I would say an opportunity is sort of new technologies.
How about the whole realm of partnerships? Whether it's business, it's community groups, it's universities, it's whatever, the partnerships out there that would be desirable.
Yeah, I think that goes under number 3. Maybe you just
Okay.
call that partnerships and then those
Okay.
are subcategories.
Okay.
Grants.
Absolutely.
Donations, endowments.
That's what I was
Increased
just gonna go
funding.
there, yeah.
Maybe we should also cross.
We have, there are probably different education models that are opportunities.
You know, one we hear a lot too, and once again, you guys take it or leave it. I don't know if this goes under partnerships, but the idea is harnessing the talent. And that's not necessarily a group, but
professionals, and, are we harnessing the people in this community for the benefit of the kids?
Lots of discussion in many districts as well lately. Year-round schooling, as well as adult education.
So I was going to piggyback on what Mary Kay said about thinking differently about the time-space continuum. That, like, there could be advances that allow us to really rethink the way we educate. That it's not all during the school day, but,
That's sort of what I meant by exploring new technology.
okay. It could come in the form of technology, for sure,
That could be different, so,
right?
no, that's what I mean.
Stored lessons that you're talking about, like recorded, digitally recorded lessons.
Well,
Okay, we've got advocate for state funding. Number 2, economic growth within the district. 13, private schools, like district synergy partnerships, so our broad brush partnerships. 4, learn from others, best practice. 5, explore new technologies. 6, grant donations, increase funding. 7, different education models. 8, rethink the systems of education. And 4, if we're indeed, we're with these 8, 4 votes.
there's something missing
7
about
and 8
leveraging, both in terms of career opportunities and secondary education, about developing relationships with secondary institutions and helping our kids find
Number
jobs.
3?
Or,
Oh, I see what
no,
you're
it's
saying.
like,
Higher ed collaboration?
but I don't mean like college prep while they're here. I mean, I'll just say it bluntly, like a college rep from a prestigious school comes to this area, takes 4 people out to dinner. Chagrin isn't necessarily on that list.
Got it.
How do we develop stronger relationships with the schools that our children, since 96% or something greater, go on to secondary education? How do we develop relationships to make sure those schools know that we're growing these students that are so well prepared?
College guidance.
So that could be the flip of number 8 under threats. Growing our brand, growing our attractiveness.
Yes. Number 9 is growing brand, right?
Yeah.
Improving upon the positive brand.
To me, it sounded like you were describing a college guidance.
Well, that was
That's
like one
a piece of it.
example.
Like,
Yeah.
part of our brand is, what do colleges think about Chagrin Falls?
Sure.
What do they know about the quality of our students?
Yeah, an opportunity.
Did you want that one by
Run
itself?
a college guidance program like a private school would run it.
Right, that could be, I think you're
That
getting
was
to,
like-
that could be that could be an action plan underneath
The brand.
this goal,
So somebody, the kids going to college.
right? I'd
I
like
think
to
what
see that
Mary
be
Kay
an
was
action
saying is
plan under
running
this
a private
goal.
school.
Any additional opportunities?
Yeah, there's something about access to athletic facilities to help with our facilities budgeting.
Is there any exactly in this context?
Well, we're a small district, we
External.
don't have a golf course for our golf teams, we don't have a swimming pool for our swimmers. We are spending money to put tennis courts in for our tennis team. We have lots of talented athletes. We actually are fortunate that we have 2 great auditoriums for our performing arts, but I don't know if people would say that there are needs there too, so there's,
I want to be on a levy committee where we advocate for us getting our own golf course.
careful what you wish for.
Yes, Sam, he was kidding. Okay, you have 5. Sorry.
No, I'm thinking more about synergies. Maybe we have like external, but maybe there's internal, intra-district synergies that we could seek, and that could be the result of technology, it could be the result of rethinking the way we use our school buildings.
I think our last strategic plan, personalized learning came out about it, and I think we're still on that spectrum, so I think we still have a lot more opportunities for personalized learning.
Personalized learning. You now have 6 votes. Okay, let's go through these again. We have 6 votes. Number 1, advocate for state funding. 2, economic growth within the district. 3, private schools, like district synergies, all-around partnerships. 4, learn from others' best practices. 5, explore new technology. 6, grants, donations, increased funding. 7, different education models. 8, rethink system of education. How do we use time? How does it all work? 9, develop relationships with higher ed, growing the brand. 10, external agreements, athletic facilities. 11, intra-district synergies. 12, personalized learning.
What's our framework with which we're evaluating these?
Once again, if we were to, time money people, if we were to dedicate resources to these opportunities, which are the resources which most help us develop students with these characteristics? You want to put new golf course? Great.
All board members get free. Free
Well,
balls of golf.
What I was trying to say is access to the things, access to the things our students need without
Different education.
it, without reliance on us providing it.
Gotcha. So it's the true partnership, so you
Yeah.
get the financial benefit with the access.
Yeah. So maybe it is in partnerships, I don't know.
We get 6?
You get 6.
What is number 7 say?
Different education models.
Is that the same as rethink system of
I
education?
think it's very, very close. You can probably say they are one and the same. I think we can combine those.
Those are 6 or 7.
So we got rid of 8, okay.
You should technically get 5 votes now, though. You're gonna hold me to 6. So 6. Okay.
Okay, get rid of them.
6, we'll stay with 6 votes, that's fine.
Greg, would it be limiting it to say 5 is included in that too? Because I think you meant technology is more than just like pieces of equipment, right? Or no?
It's similar as teaching, sort of teaching new technologies versus what you're rethinking the system of education is, or where different education models is changing how you teach. This is more course offerings that, like, new technology can keep being invented.
Okay.
It's similar, so I think they're slightly different, but I can see why you think they're the same.
Well, I guess it just depends on how much you
That's
guys
an
are
education expert, that question.
Are 1 and 6, could those go together? It's kind of like maintain or augment our funding.
I think that's, to me, they're different.
Yeah.
Because
They're
one is you're going to the state and you're paying like someone to go advocate for you, whereas 6 is you're writing grants. And it's like different people are doing it.
You get to write it actionable in different ways.
Yeah.
But 1, 2, and 6 are all creative.
Financial.
They're all steps to bring in more money to the district. So the opportunity is to identify financial sources for the district, and then the action steps are advocate for state funding, hire a lobbyist. So I actually think 1, 2, and 6 are all the same. And it should just be identify additional financial resources.
Just for this process, we'll do what you want to do, but it would be helpful if we, of those 3, we see, man, people are interested in state funding, or you want the grants where people are, because it all would fall into the same, but for this exercise, it's helpful to have an idea.
But it's, but you like advocate for state funding, and you're like, oh, We get such little,
That's
I mean, it's like, we're Chagrin Falls, you know, is down number
That's
600 on the handout list, so we can advocate all we want, and what's the, you know,
That's why I would combine them, because
Yeah.
really the biggest lever there is economic growth within the district.
I'm gonna get these down to 4 though, so I can skip one.
Because I would vote for 2.
he's gonna cut your number though.
Your number has to
Yeah, I wasn't voting for one because I said,
You're making my life harder if you get rid of those.
So 1, 2, and 6 are now the same? No.
No?
I would vote for 2, but I would not vote for you. Because I want to focus resources on that.
Okay.
That'll make a difference.
Is that hard?
I know, that's where that one gets a little
That's
tricky.
where I'm like, it's identify opportunities and then, you know, we meet with.
I could put 6 and 1 together, but leave 2 separate.
I guess it's 6 more. I'll do it more. I see opportunity. I think, you would hire 3 different people for 1, 2, and 6, in my opinion, therefore.
Down the road, you're leaving yourself an open door with more options. Should you choose to create a community engagement phase, your partner should listen for these things. Your partner should listen for community sentiment that is opposite these things. So in that respect, simply leaving more options on the table down the road provides you a collaborative partner with a deeper ear, so to speak, for what the community is saying about the importance of
So we
economic
should
development.
combine them, so it's still there.
I'm saying you should.
I know, but I think, so maybe it's not, maybe it's how they're written, right? Because maybe it's not advocate for state funding, but
Grow our external funding.
It's grow external funding. and-
Well, that's kind of what, that's why I think
Yeah.
it's in 6, that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying 6 and not 1, because
Yep,
you could do
are
that.
you okay with that? 1 and 6 go together as grow external funding?
Sure.
So it's within the district and outside of the district.
2 and 6 or 1 and 6?
How is 1 external funding? It's one of our primary funding.
I would think it'd
It's
be 2
from
and
the
6.
state, it's
From the
external.
state, though. And then, so there's within the district funding, and then there's the outside of the district funding.
Think of actionable things that can be done. You get an action, economic growth within the district, there are actionable ways we work with the community. Grants, donations, we can hire individuals to write grants. What can we do with those? Sounds as though we want to, which do we want to bring together? 1 and 6?
I'm still gonna say, it's funding growth. Like, and then that, what we do to grow our funding are the action steps that we can talk about, right? Because I wouldn't vote just for economic growth within a district. I mean, what the board can do towards that end is to meet with our mayors. And so I wouldn't give one of my 6 votes to that. But in terms of how we're funded, it's a bigger lever than advocating for state funding. So it should be grow funding, I think.
And is it just, because that almost, if you aren't sitting in this room, you're thinking they need more money. We're probably okay with what we
Identifying.
have, or identifying non-levy based.
Identifying
Yeah.
alternative funding options.
There we go.
What was that?
Identifying alternative funding options?
Yes. Right. Or, and pursuing, more than just identifying,
Identifying pursuing.
growing alternative
Yeah.
funding.
Okay, so growing alternative funding, if that's the key, that then would incorporate, so we could then eliminate 2 and eliminate 6.
I'm literally numbering that one.
How many votes do we have here?
You have like,
I
have
one
two-
vote now.
two votes.
I think that's number 1 now.
That's number
right?
1, you
Grow
got it.
alternative funding.
Okay, so I want that.
You got
All right, I
it.
have 5, down to 5.
We all want
That's good.
So you got rid of 6.
But under the lens of.
There used to be an
Okay,
alternative
yeah.
funding committee, right?
You have 4 votes. Okay, we have 4 votes.
4 votes.
Or,
4 votes.
That's a 2.
So, where we are right now, number 1, growing alternative funding. Number 3, Private schools, light district synergy partnerships. 4, learn from other best practice. 5, explore new technologies. These are together. 7, different education models, rethink the system of education. 9, develop relationships with higher ed, growing the brand. 10, external agreements, athletic facilities, how to access their facilities in a cost-effective way. 11, interdistrict synergies. 12, personalized learning.
Am I?
5, did you say? 4.
I see what you're doing. You get 4. That was very, very well played. 4.
How many are we supposed to get?
4.
Oh, perfect, yeah, we're
We're
ready.
there.
I was trying to add a 5th.
I hope people, if nobody votes for number 1, I'm going to go crazy.
I said
Number 1. 5, all right. Hey. Number 3, private schools, like-minded.
Partnerships?
Yes, partnerships.
Yes.
1. Number 4, learn from others, best practice. 5. Number 5, explore new technologies. 1. Number 7, which is these two together, different education models, rethink system of education. 4. 9, develop relationships with higher ed, growing brand. 2.
That was number 9?
Yes.
Okay, okay, that's me.
10, external agreements, athletic facilities, partnering. 1. 11, intra-district synergies. 0. Number 12, personalized learning. 1.
When you, actually, then send me out as candidate, would you describe what the community engagement piece looks like for this process?
Sure. The community, there's different ways to do it. We've always advocated we get together with leadership here and a couple of people. One is focus groups. We identify what are the different groups in the community. Is there a group where senior citizens are meeting? Students. A lot of value in meeting with your students. We also have a piece with parents. When I meet with parents, you want to have one section that's just general community. That's hard to get folks to advertise at a certain time. We've had a huge amount of success going where people already are. If you've got a Rotary, if you've got a Kiwanis, if you have friends in the library, have a speaker in, usually, if you can go in and use that time to engage with them, it's fabulous. What we always ask is that a school district leadership person be there to introduce, and then what they do is they'll say, we so want to hear what's on your heart. We're stepping out. We're actually going to lead. And then that third party then conducts that information. So the focus groups. Another piece is your key influencers. There are people in this town, you need their opinion, and they're too busy to show up to a focus group. So is it 10, is it 20, whoever they are, and we would call them personally and just ask them what their thoughts are. We need to make sure that they feel as though they're engaged. There's a senior citizen, there's different ways to do this. There's a senior citizen phone poll. Phone polls by themselves are a bad idea because people don't answer the phone unless they're 65 plus, they do. So the idea is if you really want to get some data points from your seniors, we usually do about 100 data points from senior citizens because they'll give you great information. There's an online poll. We're doing this, we used to do it with Hudson right now, they've got 700 something respondents, and they'll have 1,000, but you get the house in every medium, you get the online participation. So you're pushing on all of your websites, all your emails, your Facebook posts to get that piece as well. I'm forgetting into the, that's it. So
Can I
that's pretty well.
ask another clarifying? So are you starting with what we've created and having them respond to it, or are they starting with a blank slate to identify strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and
They
threats?
start with a blank slate.
Okay.
Because the idea is we don't want to precondition any
Right.
ideas. And they don't go through, this is too extensive, but what their process is, how's everything going in the schools? In a very broad sense, you get great stuff, but what are we doing really well? What are areas for improvement? How can we better communicate with you? And our job in the crowd is to ask, how come? Where'd you hear that? What's the basis of that? What do you think? And just for those 4 questions, you continue to ask probing. Our job is to say about 10 words during the whole thing and let them talk, and you get some great stuff.
Okay.
The objective at the end is we want, if any individual would ever say, gosh, I didn't have an opportunity to participate, we want to be able to say, holy smokes, I mean, there was all of these opportunities, everybody really had a sincere opportunity to be part of it.
Good. Well, I think there's a danger of us being in our own echo chamber when you do an internal analysis like this, so I'm happy to hear that it will be looked at with fresh eyes from people who, have a lot to say, I hope.
It's great stuff. One of our favorites, we did one at the middle school. One of my favorite, the middle school kid raised his hand and said, how about the students teach the teachers technology? Because we know more than they do. Everybody laughed, like, that's a heck of a great idea.
Yeah.
So they put some things in place, so we get the best ideas.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Any additional questions about where we are and where we're not? Well, thank you all. This is a long process.
Thank you. That was
Appreciate your
helpful.
time tonight.
Quite a
Really
sense,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you.
So what's next?
Dr. Hunt?
That's it.
Oh, you can yeah.
Community comments are one way for citizens to communicate with the Board of Education. Community members who have contact with the superintendent in advance will be provided with an opportunity to speak first. Public comment may be limited to 30 minutes, and each participant will have 3 minutes to speak. No person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have had the opportunity to do so. When you are called upon by the board president, please stand, state your name, address, and topic. Remember that this is a formal and official meeting of the Board of Education, and what you say becomes part of the official meeting report. If your comment involves a problem with a student, employee, or board member, please do not address them by name. Please keep in mind that we are meeting in a schoolhouse and possibly in the presence of students. At this time, the primary role of the Board of Education is to listen and reflect upon your comments. Does anybody like to address the board? Moving on, consent agenda items. Could I have a motion for consent agenda items 7A through 7D?
So,
Second?
Seconded?
Okay, Ms. Bruno, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Reagan.
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger. Yes. Mrs. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, on the treasurer's recommendations. Do I have a motion for treasurer's recommendations 8A through 8B?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All right.
Okay, item A is, it's one that announces that announce, but there's only one. I will correct it. This is for Maxim, this is not the magazine, this is a company that we use for health services. The invoice amount is $6,027.56. Invoice date was November 30th, and the PO did not get through until December 2nd. Item B are the financial reports for the month of December. There is a new report in here. I don't know, hold on, my speaker here. If everybody's had a chance to go through this, but if you have any comments or criticism or anything you would like me to add to this or change, what I have done is taken the estimate, the monthly estimate per our SM water report, just the first summer report there, and taken that estimate, compared it to that month, and then the columns there to the right are the fiscal year to date estimate, what we expected we would have received and spent by that point, and the actual numbers there, and then the variance. I haven't really determined yet what we're going to use, if we want to provide explanation for, if we want to set a benchmark, anything over a certain percentage or a certain dollar amount, or if we just kind of want to decide based on what it is, if we're going to provide an explanation there. So if you have input on that, let me know. If you want to see an explanation for every variance beyond a certain percentage or what, let me know.
I'm sorry, which page is this?
This is on the third page. It is called the General Fund Variance Report. So we've discussed in Finance Committee, and we've discussed it here a couple times as well, having some sort of comparative information to
The actuals.
what we're
Right.
comparing
So we
to
know
what we
where we're on
estimated versus what we're doing. So I thought it made the most sense to compare our monthly numbers and our year-to-date, because if the monthly variance is really small each month, it still could add up. And then, sometimes there's a complete explanation for it, sometimes we just,
And the other way
we're just off on
around.
our
I mean,
estimates.
if you had your budget that you're gonna collect property taxes in February, you don't
Right.
collect them in March. you
Sometimes
have-
it's just timing.
You have
yeah.
two huge variances, but in total they're not.
Yeah, so if there are, obviously huge items, I will provide an explanation for. Sometimes there's really no explanation, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know exactly what's gonna happen.
So I think instead of prescribing a certain dollar or percentage amount, I really trust your judgment to call to our attention a variance that's easily explained or one that is something that you're concerned about that you want to draw to our attention. Does anybody else feel like we need anything more formal? This does bring to mind, sorry, did I interrupt you?
So I just said, yeah, let's start with that.
Okay. You may have this, and maybe you could issue it in a board report over the next few weeks. I was curious, since our last levy, where we're tracking with regard to the budgeted expenditures, revenues and expenditures at the time of the last levy to where we are now. And I don't know that we ever get like a 5-year forecast that says, here's what we forecasted over this 5-year period, and here's what the actuals were. I might be misremembering, but it might be interesting to see it, to reinforce that we are where we thought we would be in our spending and our revenues. There's nothing really out of line,
So you want more of
like a
an
summary.
annual comparison to a previous forecast?
Right.
The only one problem I see with that, let me think this through, is, okay, we can't project, we know we're gonna, like in the 5 years, we know we're gonna have a levy, but we can't put that in our 5-year
Right.
forecast.
Right.
So we know that that's not right, so,
The revenues aren't, if there's a levy, but if it's since the last levy,
Right, we
The
can
for-
do that, but if we can't ever put in our forecast.
Yeah,
close to
right.
the
And you're
levy.
the further out you get, obviously, the less accurate you are in a forecast. But I think what you're trying to get at is if 3 years ago we said we were gonna be spending
Right.
$25 million a year and we're spending 30, what the
Right.
heck is
Right,
going on?
expenses,
Yes.
expenses we can do, yeah.
Yeah,
The
let me-
revenues are-
okay.
Let me
yeah.
see what I can come up with, maybe kind of do a little
Okay.
analysis. Because that's a good exercise too, just to kind of see how accurate we are in our forecasting, because there are so many variables and so many
exactly.
things
So
that
you've got it
change.
now on a monthly basis
Um,
and for this fiscal year, but if we're looking retrospectively,
Yeah. Okay.
That's
And that
exactly-
would probably be more of just a periodically, something I
Oh,
would
yeah.
provide, not in a monthly.
Right.
Okay.
Might even be something incorporated into the 5-year forecast updates. Just while we're looking forward, let's look backward. And you're right, I mean, obviously we can't allow for things that we can't predict, but to the degree we're measuring how well did we forecast, how well did we meet our budget that we expected. And I think it'll give confidence in the community that we are doing a really good job with managing our finances and sticking with the budget that we told them we would stick with.
I'll come up with something.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. On the revenue detail, and then on the expenditure detail, the graphs this month, I provided line graphs there for you to compare to the prior year, to kind of show, how we're tracking compared to where we did last year. Obviously, the fiscal year 20 numbers only go through December, where that line stops there. So, looking at the revenue, we're pretty close to where we were. That October item there, I believe, was a return of advances. That's why you see that variance there, that little blip there in October was just returning advances. The expenditures in December as well, the blip there for this year is the transfers that we made to the PI fund that were approved by the board.
Maybe it's just me, but I see the line graph, I think line is continuous, where I would rather do that as a bar graph. maybe it's just the way I look at things, because it's like, this was your number in January, this is your number in February, but.
So comparing each month?
Yeah, when I first looked at this, I was like, what am I comparing? But it's just, I mean, you're going, or else I want to see points, because these are not,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Because like, it's a number, at, you know, in July, 8 million.
The line should
And
be
then
like
the next
a running
million.
difference or something.
Yeah, the line is the difference, it's not, I don't
Do you
know.
like the waterfall graphs?
Or maybe, are you saying like accumulated year-to-date?
I don't know, I just,
You could add 2 more lines, which are, yeah, that are the cumulative year-to-date for fiscal year 2020, so we see how that compares to.
Yeah,
That
I've
would flatten
been
it out.
kind of alternating these graphs every month, kind of just providing like new information.
you just made me, you made me think, when I'm like, what is this? Yeah.
Okay. Next report is the financial summary report for all funds. Nothing unexpected there that we really need to talk about. And then the bank reconciliation. The ACH number for the STRS, if anyone looked at that and noticed it's higher than the previous months, that is because the ACH got denied by the bank when I did it. I did not realize it. It didn't kick back to me. It's supposed to generate an email. It didn't. So I didn't realize until I went to go balance and do my next STRS transaction and went in there and saw, wait a minute, this one never went out. So that's actually 2 months worth of transactions there. And then the state taxes, obviously, that was just one pay. And then the division of where all of our deposits and investments are. The detail there, I'm not going to go through that. And that's it, recommending your approval.
Please take a roll.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger? Yes. Mrs. Curtis?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
All right, other business. Does anybody have any other business they'd like to introduce?
I have a
discuss?
question, for both of you, probably Bob. At one point, we talked about collecting, we were on the list for the OFCC and collecting upfront payment instead of waiting 20 years for them to give the district money or something. And in the transition of treasurers, I can't recall if the board took action and we decided to do that, or if it was an idea that was generated but we haven't acted on.
I thought we evaluated our options, and it was not something we could pursue, but I can check that on that. So essentially, it was trying to access your money.
It was like where you were, if you were in the top 20 districts, you could take your money now instead of waiting
There
until
was-
there was,
there was
it was a
legislative-
discount.
You
There's
take it, you
legislative-
get a payout now, and you waive access to the funding for the next 10 or 20 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
there was legislative conversation about that. I can't remember if that passed,
Okay.
so I can probably verify that.
Okay. I was just thinking it might be enough to pay for the bus garage.
Right. So obviously, if that could be added into our
Yeah,
capital
we would
budget,
get like
that would be
5%
great.
of the bus garage or something.
No, I don't know, because it was a percentage of our total, it was a small percentage of our total needs as a district, but it might.
Any other business?
Actually, let me mention one thing. So last year, building off of what Mary Kay had said, there used to be a board president group, like a regional group that got together. So last year, I did reach out to some of the board presidents in our area to see if there was interest in kind of revitalizing that. And there seems to be. So the idea is just to share best practices and have the board presidents have an opportunity to interact, and they might address different topics. Like one of the topics that came up was ed choice, and where one of the board members in Cleveland Heights would like to host a session where she would educate other board members about ed choice and talk about the impact of it in the districts. So it looks like that's getting some likes, underneath it. So I wanted to let you guys know that. Because a lot of boards are transitioning their leadership, I'm going to host a social gathering next week for outgoing and incoming board presidents. Just in this, it's kind of a general geographic area, but it certainly is open to anybody who would want to be part
Yeah,
of this
I
group.
think-
So
When I used to do it years ago, it wasn't necessarily presidents.
Right.
It was who
And the board could appoint
Right, who
somebody,
wanted to do that or
right?
something.
So it certainly is very, obviously you can't have, you know, more than 2 board members at the meetings. But there might be a topic that's really interesting to Hudson and they want to send 2 board members and certainly, I mean, it's not intended to be overly restrictive. More of just a way to get to know each other, to share best practices and help with our own professional development as board members. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that's happening. So Phil is going to come and meet some of these other members and I guess we'll figure out how this will proceed going forward. And the thinking is that if you had a topic you were really interested in, you would host the meeting, you would arrange the date. And it's not prescribed in any other way. It's not like there's going to be meetings every month or anything like that. So,
Great, thanks for hosting.
sure.
Anybody else of the business? All right, great, seeing none. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, February 5th at 6 p.m. in this room. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Seconded.
All right, Ms. Boozer?
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Thanks for coming.